Welcome to Interchange, a conversation about music and liturgy and all the in-between spaces on the journey. I'm your host, Kate Williams. In today's episode, I'm joined by Mark Miller, a minister of music at Christ Church in Summit, New Jersey, a lecturer in sacred music at Yale University, and professor of church music at Drew University. Mark, welcome to Interchange.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you for joining me in the midst of your craziness, your busyness that is this summer, including an upcoming wedding.
Yes. Yeah. The most unlikely of things. I think in, the fall of 1991, when I met my sweetheart and future partner, husband, at 24 years old, planning for our daughter's wedding in 2025 would have been the last thing on our minds. But here we are, and on this wonderful, unlikely journey, and I'm very excited.
Yeah, I do, maybe selfishly, but I do hope that you share a little bit of that journey with everyone. I was so honored that you shared so much of it with me, kind of as it was happening.
Yeah. And you were a huge friend and great help in those times.
Oh my gosh. We should, we're kind of teasing it out already, if you don't mind. I just want to say, I met Mark. First of all, I heard about Mark through Adam Tice, who started working with you, I think in 2020, and had shared, a lot about your legacy of music, to the point where when I had mentioned to Michael Silhavy, I think Adam's going to start working with Mark Miller. And Michael Silhavy was like, the Mark Miller. Oh my goodness. You have had a very long career composing. Your work is published with several different publishing houses. Very honored that now GIA is a part of that story too. But I met you first at the Hymn Society, and there was always a little nervous meeting somebody who has such a reputation that precedes them. But there is such a welcoming presence that is just a part of you. And so even sitting at that little cafeteria table at Hymn Society, there was kind of an immediate closeness I felt as we were kind of, feeling each other out with curiosity, so what do you think about this? What about that? It was just kind of it's hard to put words to, I think, when you have those kind of magical, mystical connections with someone that, of course, that story is still unfolding for us. But one of the things that I bonded with you on early on was the way that you embody being a dad, and the way that I think about that in a particular way. One of, that is a part of longing and hurt and absence. And I think we've had some really important to me conversation about that. But you are a dad. And you're a dad who knows the aches and pains, growing pains.
Yeah.
Absence too. But it's important for me, I think, to hear your perspective, on the dad side of things.
Well, I mean, so much of who you think you are gets really humbled by children, I would say.
Amen.
So, my career as a church musician, or trying to be a leader in the Methodist Church, and faith communities everywhere, to be more open and affirming. Sometimes I definitely get put on a pedestal, like at our first church music blind date, lunch date, and that went so right, getting to meet you and those immediate connections when we realized we had been friends all our lives. And the music is what an incredible binding agent that is, spiritual binding agent for us to know things so deeply without having to say them. Yeah, be put on this pedestal, and then have children bring you right back down to earth, because they seem to push the buttons that no one else can, and make you feel the things that you wish you could rise above sometimes. And, and I think a lot of my own parents, and for better or worse, the wonderful ways they raised me, and also the problematic ways. And that's just how we are as humans, to see how it all kind of unfolds, and we hopefully try to do our best. But,
Yeah.
Sometimes families are the hardest to reconcile. Sometimes we just have to let go
Yeah.
some of those relationships that just don't let us grow or let us be who we are. Fortunately, I feel like in my own life with my own parents, I had models that showed me what it was like to give people room to grow. And while at the same time, members of our family had very, very serious kind of shadowy places, for lack of a better word, holes that couldn't be filled,
Yeah.
or, parts of ourselves that just were so hurting that we could never quite make the connection. I was adopted as a baby. You know this story. I was 7 days old when I was first adopted by my parents, and back in the 60s, all they knew in this closed adoption, my parents, who were white, said, we're going to be adopting this little black baby boy. To my brothers and sisters at the time, in 1967, on a cold day in January, I was flown down from Vermont to New Jersey, and they met me. And supposedly there was a blanket over me because it was like -0.
Yeah.
And when they finally got a chance to look at me, my sister, who was 4 years old at the time, said, "Well, he's not that black." And it was kind of my entrance into the Miller family, where
Not that black.
I'm not that black. And which is, of course, the irony of that story came back to me fully after I had gone through training at Yale and Juilliard to be a concert organist and church musician. And I had my first job at the Baptist Church in Harlem, Convent Avenue Baptist Church, and was trying to play This Little Light of Mine one of the first Sundays there. And I had no experience really in a black church or with gospel music at all. But because they saw my melanin and thought, well, he's an accomplished organist, he could probably play gospel music. And when it got to This Little Light of Mine, I ended up playing what was in the hymnal, which was, "This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine." And the minister stopped me after the first verse, and said, "Brother Mark, you probably don't realize, but we do it the other way." The way that, and he kind of looked at me like, the social cue, how to play this. More life, more rhythm. And I panicked, not knowing what to do. So I just started playing just a little faster with more life. And it was a total disaster. Of course, the people are trying to sing "This Little Light of Mine." And I just had a feeling at my 24-year-old self at that moment that all 500 heads in that sanctuary, full sanctuary, were turned looking at me saying, "He's not that black."
Oh my God. Oh my God.
And so that's kind of been triggering for me my whole life. No, but I realized in that moment that all the music that I learned at Juilliard and Yale, like nothing had prepared me to learn the music of the African American experience. And so I tell my students now that 34 years ago, when that happened, that I didn't realize then, but was the beginning of my deconstructing the white supremacy of my church music education.
Yeah.
And that there was indeed different performance practices that I should avail myself to, which don't always appear on a page of sheet music, but I can hear with my ears, and I can see how they're being played on a keyboard with my eyes. And so started engaging in different performance practices with chord symbols and sounds and rhythms that were sacred just as much as the Western European experience of my of my upbringing.
Yeah.
So to consider both sacred for me was really important.
Hope will not fail. No, hope will not fail. Though anguish and apathy seem to prevail, no, hope will not fail. Hope will prevail.
Wow, that's nothing about my family, but
Okay. It's about you.
but the adoption piece was really important because for me, like adoption signifies something that is so a piece of who I am. It was only in my adulthood, I think, that I met people who would like whisper about adoption, be like, "Oh, are you adopted?" I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm adopted." Like, because ever since I was young, I was brown skinned and my parents were white, and I knew that I was adopted, but I also never thought about it as a barrier to who they were as my parents.
Mm.
They were my mom and dad. In fact, I think I was 12 years old when I realized I had the first conscious realization when a friend of mine who was over from school the town I grew up in, we were the only people of color in our family. I grew up in a family of 7 kids, and 5 of us were adopted. And so my oldest brother and sister were white, and 2 brothers and a sister who were Korean, and my younger sister and I who were black or biracial. And so I had a friend over from school, and my mom came in to make a snack. And my white friend spun on me as soon as she left the room and said, "Oh my God, your mom is white." And I immediately was as shocked as he was. I thought, "Oh my God, she is." It had never occurred to me. I knew she was white, but hadn't really thought about it. She was just my mom. So, theologically, we talk about adoption a lot because God adopts us.
Right.
This idea of adoption into the family of God. So for me, it's just as special, I guess, or it's not a secondary type of citizenship.
Mm.
And when I did meet my life partner, husband, soulmate, Mike, in 1991, we talked about that we would have someday we'd probably want to adopt children.
Yeah.
And we did many years later after we were married, and we adopted Keith and Elise, who were 7 and 4 at the time, in fall of 2008. I'd say that the trauma that they experienced earlier on, which included neglect, but also things that the social agency didn't pick up on
Mm.
until we found out much more recently, and now that they're adults,
Mm.
are significant. And so we're now dealing with, the effects of the hard times that families who have been historically systemically oppressed by the factors that are beyond their control, how it plays out on our children it's significant, and it's what we're dealing with.
Mm.
But our daughter, who when she was 20 years old, just decided that she needed to take off and have her own space, but she wasn't in communication with us. She just left. And it was really hard time to come to terms with the fact that, we knew from friends that she was okay, that she was safe, but that she just needed space from us. And she didn't give any date to say when that would be over or why it was, although she did also let us know through a friend that it wasn't us necessarily, that it wasn't anything we did, but something that she was searching for in herself to try to find out who she was. And it wasn't until last summer, a year and a week ago, that we were back in touch with her through a social agency saying, your daughter has just had a baby that she didn't know she was pregnant until 2 hours before she gave birth.
Wild.
And,
Wild.
yeah. I was just talking to a obstetrician friend of mine, and he said, "Mark, you wouldn't believe how many times that has happened." He said, over my career, women coming into the hospital saying, I just have these bad, and I can't be pregnant. I cannot be pregnant. And he says, "Well, let's talk about that after we deliver the baby."
Oh my God.
So
Well, it's wild in and of itself, but also the context that it happened and that I learned that it happened was about a month after I had seen you at another hymn society, and we were at a dinner, and I knew just a little bit about your story and your children, and it was like pouring out of you that you said, "Kate, I had this dream last night, and I cannot shake the feeling. It was a dream that I was in my yard and Elise came home and we just hugged and fell on the ground, hugging and laughing and crying, and it was so real." And I think as you were telling it, I'm simplifying all the beautiful details that you shared, I think we were both just weeping at the table, like imagining this at the time seemingly impossible thing. And then a month later, you leave
Oh my
me
God.
a
I
voice
forgot that
memo.
dream. I forgot that dream.
Yeah,
Oh my God. But
yeah,
now I remember it fully and vividly. And of course, just thought, yeah, how could it be? But yes, I left you a voice memo.
yes, you left me a voice memo because you had shared that
S-
dream with me, and you were like, "You are not gonna believe. I can't believe. I don't even know what to say. I'm in the middle of. I can't believe this is happening." But Elise is home, and I have a grandson.
Yeah, talk about tidings of good news and joy. And it's amazing how babies just break open your world.
Yeah,
I'm really glad I heard Jesus' story has it's right on target
yeah,
to say that, the impossible can happen through the birth of a child,
yeah,
that love can be restored and not love restored, but relationships restored
yeah.
by the power of love and new life. And so, yeah, the day that we were reunited and we hugged and said we loved each other and she said, I love you. And which wasn't our language ever. And growing up, she wouldn't say that, but it was incredible. And a month later, she and her fiance and Jabari, their son, our grandson, moved in with us. So, our life has been turned upside down and in pretty amazing ways to watch this life, who's now over a year old, to grow up with us and the joy he brings. And she wanted him baptized in the church that she grew up in at Christ Church and Summit. And now this Saturday, they're getting married and going to celebrate their commitment to each other. And
It's
it's
incredible.
it's incredible.
It really
So
is.
yeah, thank you for helping me like pull out and look at the big picture, because if anyone knows about weddings are like hell on earth the week before. So, it's good to
Yeah,
remember what a beautiful story this is. And
yeah.
um
And there's this, especially, when you're just recounting it and pulling out the highlights, it's almost overly romanticized, this reunion. And, ultimately, oh, they get married in the end. Yay. But also, and I know that it's not a smooth path. But it's worth figuring out. It's worth waiting for timings to be right, and it's worth figuring out the bumpy parts on the way. And that too is, I think, what's important. I'm thinking as you're talking about all the people I know who will see themselves in some version of your adoption story, your own adoption, and then the adoption of your two children. And it's important to know, no matter what happens in our own story, like to have these examples where you see like hope realized. Sometimes that's all you need, is to see somebody else's hope realized, to see somebody else follow through with that desire to persevere, to fight for it, to wait for it, if that's what it
and,
is. That's
and
enough, like, to keep me hopeful too, about whatever that means. And I certainly feel lots of resonance in the way that you speak about adoptive love too. Of course, I think that's one of the attractive parts about the scriptures, is reminding us all of our adoption in the eyes of God and that ultimate belovedness with which you would hope a parent sees a child.
Who you are is yours to know. Who I am is mine. As you are is how you're loved. Fallible, divine. Fallible, divine.
it's healing for me to think about all of the people, even, in less formalized ways, who have adopted me. And, sometimes the messiness of that being, prior to working at GIA, I was a music minister. And, I was, as a kid, I started as a music director, young, like you.
You still
Um,
are, yeah.
being like 19 years old and directing this ensemble full of 50, 60, 70, 80-year-olds. I mean, of course, there's going to be an element of like, well, this is kind of a mess because y'all are, parenting me and I'm supposed to be your leader. But, I have been blessed by the willingness of all to be in that mess with me, to be willing to offer so much self gift of time and wisdom and patience and presence and all those things. And those little bits and little peoples who I call, all the people who I call my moms and my dads throughout all the places that life has taken me. How can I be anything other than grateful, despite my own longings about the biological connections that I wish, were there? It's a long-winded way of saying, thank you for being so open and for sharing so much about your very real life. That is in a very real way very stressful right now as you're planning a wedding, preparing to attend your daughter's wedding. It's just beautiful. And, we're having a very subdued conversation today, but your music that is born of your experience and your perspective of the world is quite colorful. I mean, don't you describe yourself this way as some combination of Disney and gospel and Radiohead?
Yeah, that's good. Liturgical Disney, Tom York, Tori Amos, Billy Joel,
Yeah.
J.S. Bach. Yeah, those people probably had a huge influence. I love what Robert Glasper does in his reimagining of jazz. I mean, and crazy things. And it's from my upbringing. And sometimes I say with wolves, but I mean with white people that I had like Dan Fogelberg.
Moment of appreciation for the white people as wolves.
Raised by wolves. Dan Fogelberg is like I listen to probably every other day, and that's one person I so wish I could have met. He died too young, cancer, some years back, and I just feel such a closeness to his music. While I don't know, for my own sake, like what I write, it definitely came out of like a utilitarian place because being in church is, with people having to sing every week, you have to make the donuts every week. I was not impressed with a lot of the music I was seeing. I was like, let me try writing some. And, that was in 1992, 93. And most of that, 99% of the music from 1992 till 1999, I would never want to see again. And even from 99 to 2004 might be a little sketchy. So I feel like it took me a while to come into my own voice and see who I was and be happy with who I am, in musically speaking, compositionally speaking. So, what I learned in the Black church was that I'm much closer to Charles Tindley, and who's one of the great hymn writers of the turn of the 20th century, African American hymn writer, and then closer to maybe Richard Smallwood in the way he kind of combined European classical music with gospel. So, yeah, those people, have kind of profoundly shaped me. And yeah, I'm just grateful to be able to be playful. I feel like creativity and playfulness has, like if I want to create something, Yeah, sometimes it feels like work because, I'm being commissioned or luckily I feel like I don't have to rely on, if I don't make this music, I won't be able to live or something. I don't know if I could be in that place but to kind of feel like this openness of possibility when I write, which sometimes means people give me some very specific things to write about, and that's helpful too, to kind of have those structures and boundaries. But I think sometimes the best things I write just come unbidden and from strong emotion or feeling that I'm having.
When the fig tree fails to blossom and no fruit is on the vine, when our fields are bare as deserts and our hope is hard to find, when a song of celebration seems entirely out of place, when our lives are stretched to breaking, hanging by a thread of grace, we will rejoice. We will rejoice in the Lord, in the Lord. We'll rejoice in the Lord, in the when the sun and moon are shaken and the heavens lose their light, when we think we are forsaken, there's a comforter inside, for the day is surely coming when these labor pains have passed. We will greet the new creation, and with all the saints at last, we will rejoice. We will rejoice in the Lord, in the Lord. We'll rejoice in the Lord, in the Lord. In the Lord.
Is that what happened when you wrote that piece that made me cry at the concert? The Teach Me to Fly piece.
Oh, the Teach Me to Fly. Well, that was an interesting case because Lindy Thompson sent me she had written a poem called Learning to Fly, maybe, or maybe it was Teach Me to Fly. And then she refashioned the poem into lyrics and said, would I have a try at writing it? And I looked at it, and usually if I don't have a pretty immediate feeling about how I would approach the piece, I let it go. And I say, no, it's not for me. And I did that with that piece, Teach Me to Fly. And she came back after a week and said, I really think it's worth giving it another try. And I looked at and I was like, no, I don't understand this. I don't understand what you mean when you say asking God, can God make up the difference? Can God help me to fly? I don't connect with the idea that
I'm gonna cry.
what's that?
I'm going to cry again.
Oh,
Just a minute.
I have a hard time connecting with the idea that, that there's something in me that there's something missing.
Mm.
That, I've felt my whole life that, God has made us, each one of us, beloved. And, our whole life journey is trying to kind of come to accept that. And yeah, it's in stages and growth, and we learn something new every day. But I'm too naive and, I don't know, some people would say ignorant maybe, to feel like anyone is less than.
Mm.
And finally, the third time, she was like, come on, Mark, I just don't want to give up on this. And I kind of was frustrated and a little bit angry. And I'm like, oh, man. And I sat down at the piano. I'm like, okay, I'll give her a song. And then, despite myself, this thing came out like almost whole cloth. I mean, in 10 minutes, it was done. And it was done because she hadn't written the last part. She had only written the questions. I was like, no, there is an answer. God will be faithful and teach us to fly, and God can make up the difference. And then it made sense to me, and then I could sing it. But because if it's not authentic to who I am, I just don't, I can't imagine I would want to sing that, something that I wrote. And she helped me be in touch with real empathy about the places and the times, because of course there are places and times in my life where, you know, I need help. I'm unsure.
Yeah.
And I really wish things could be different. Or I'm wondering, if God's promises might be true, and all of us, her line, which really gets me every time, is, God, help me be ready. Help me be ready for a brand new start, because, that's every day. So that I could really get behind and feel pretty passionate about. Lord, help me with this brand new start. So, yeah.
Well, it's interesting to hear you talk about, but hearing, I've had a crazy summer too. I've actually just felt like now that Ava has started third grade, I felt like, oh, thank God we can finally find a rhythm again, because I've been traveling a ton this summer, and then we moved this summer. And the institute where I saw you, where you sang that song in that concert, was like the week before I signed the papers to sell our old house and buy our new house. And the new house, it's just me and Ava. And those questions of doubt, and of course, yes, just like you said, of course we all have those moments. The psalmist had those moments, and we relive those psalms in new ways all the time. But for a divorced mom who, whether it be because of, my particular line of work, or because of the age of social media, having to navigate it so publicly, hearing that language and that the way that you set that particular language to this soaring melody was like, oh, those moments when somebody is finally putting something in a way that your whole body just already knew, but you heard somebody else say it and sing it, and you feel that wave of electricity send goosebumps all the way through your whole body. Yeah. Can you make up the difference? Dear God, let it be true that you're going to make up the difference, because I'm feeling a whole lot of question and wonder. And yeah, I'm also super capable, and we're going to be fine. And I'm a human being who has these types of questions and wonderments too. So thank God Lindy pushed you on that one.
Thank you, Lindy.
Thank you, Lindy. Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys have had a long successful partnership in writing together. What was the first one that you guys did together?
Welcome to God's Love is the first song we did together. And yeah, I was skeptical from the start because I didn't know. I just thought when we first met at this organ concert I was doing in Nashville, she and her family came to this organ concert, which also should be suspect. You bring your 3 children under, 14 to an organ concert. I'm like, oh my gosh.
I hear that.
Being an organist, I can say that. But she had known some of my music beforehand and wanted to meet. And yeah, and when we met, I thought, well, that was nice to meet you. I'm going back to New Jersey and I never will see you again. And I just thought, I remember specifically thinking, there she is with this beautiful family, this white, beautiful family in the middle of the South where she's a devout Christian. And I just remember her hair being perfect. And I knew she homeschooled her children. So I thought, there's nothing in common with this person and I'll never see them again. And, God definitely has a sense of humor because I'm wrong quite a bit. And thank God, because she emailed me out of the blue and said, I'm still thinking about that concert. And I shared some of my story, I guess, at the concert. And she said, I've written some words. I never have written lyrics before, but I thought, I guess she had written some prose, but never sung lyrics. And then and before I could hit recycle, delete on the email, because I do not care for unsolicited emails, but I looked and I thought, oh my gosh, these words, families of all shapes and kinds, love the only tie that binds, this gathering of open hearts and minds, welcome to God's love. And I thought, okay, yeah, she got me. These are good. And then it was like, talk about an outpouring of the Spirit. She just kept writing and writing. And I kept saying, oh my gosh, this is great. Oh my gosh, this is great. So yeah, I think of her as like a, 21st century Fanny Crosby. And I mean, she's not thousands of pieces, but she's definitely getting up into the hundreds of pieces. And it all started with this crazy organ concert at Scarrett Bennett Center in Nashville. So
there is a redemptive quality about the organ. Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I tease. She's a good one. And you've, of course, collaborated with lots of good hymn text writers.
God.
A lot of them at GIA too. Adam, of course, and Hannah, Chris Shelton.
Adam and Hannah.
Dave Bjorlin.
Dave Bjorlin.
Oof.
Is, wow, he surprises me all the time. And I'm bad. Like, I think I've told you this before. Like, I am one of the nicest, most generous people until it comes to music. And then I'm a huge critic and I get really testy about how things get played. And I'm really critical, I feel like, about words and melodies. And it's been such like a breath of fresh air to get these new books that GIA is putting out, your new songbook, and
thank you.
Dave's new songbook and Hannah's new book. And
yes,
there are so many wonderful things. And I keep I'm like, oh my gosh, I really like this. And my friends make fun of me because they're like, oh, okay, we're only going to hear Mark Miller music today. I'm like, no, but look at this. Look at this by Kate. Look at this by Hannah. Look at this by Dave. So, and Ben Brody, I mean, I'm really encouraged by the fresh wind of what's coming up out of the
that's so
congregational
kind.
songs.
We're in such good company, and I'm so glad you're here. It really is. It's just a joy to spend time with you, and of course, just life-changing to make music with you. You never forget. I'll never forget all that time in the studio, the concertizing, just hearing you in a workshop, and I love seeing the way that others are transformed by your work too. And people come back later and say like, I keep thinking about that thing that Mark said at his workshop. I'm like, yeah, me too.
Gather at the river, children. Time to come and see. Justice and community growing. All God's people free. In faith with grateful hearts, we open wide the doors. Love and healing will abound. Now and ever, now and ever, now and Listen to the stories, children. All of God's love and light. As the touch of Jesus will burn. Blessings and new sight. When in faith with grateful hearts, we open wide the door. Love and healing will now and ever. Go and share the good news, children. Love is meant for all. Reconciliation is coming. Can you hear the call? When in faith, with grateful hearts, we open wide the door. Love and healing now and ever, now and ever, now and
I think that's like the best compliment if you do or say something that somebody's still thinking about later, like however that might, mingle with their own perspective and their own ideas. Like it's so life-giving, really generative. And I think that would be part of my answer. I want to, kind of round things out here. My question for you, especially when you think, I know you have served in a variety of denominations, but you are Methodist, right? And the Methodists certainly are no stranger to their own types of controversy and division. And so when people ask you, like, why do you keep doing this? Why do you bother? You're a fantastic musician. You don't have to just play in church, Why do you keep doing this thing?
I guess because I haven't learned any better, but
There you go.
No, it's a very, very core thing for me. It's like the root of a tree to play for church. And when I say church, I mean like a space where people are coming who are looking for connection, and the music can lead us all to these deeper truths. And that can happen, at that's happened for me at, listening to Stevie Wonder or going to a Radiohead concert, or, I will not I will not put a hierarchical label on what we do in faith communities, because sometimes I go to church and it's more like a performance show devoid of any real connection. So I'm very careful to say that, God can be everywhere and anywhere. But for me, eh, I feel most closely attuned to the spirit I grew up in of communal song that talks about the goodness of God. And I can't get away from it. And my music, and the music that I am drawn to probably looks at God in peripheral ways. I don't want to list the didactic reasons or the dogma of what I believe, unless it's I believe in the sun even when it's not shining, or I believe in love even when I don't feel it. I believe in God even when God is silent. That's the type of creed that I want to sing. But the understanding, like Jesus teaches in parables, that's for me the most wondrous understanding, that Jesus is not going to tell you straightforward. Beauty can never be apprehended. God can never be apprehended straightforward. It always has to be cloaked in the mystery of, it's too big to just say a fact. The truth of birth, death, and resurrection is, and that's why music does it so well, that we have these incredible truths that get very brittle and fragile and fearful when we make them into facts, or make them into kind of, I don't know, all these little tin soldiers walking in the same way of conformity or something. So for me, and it's not, the music breathes into the people, and the people are young and old, and gay and bi and trans, and some are straight, and they're different colors and educations, and maybe they don't all believe the same thing, but we're all kind of pointed in the same direction of, we have to live together, and love is what we're heading towards, and justice and peace is what we're going to try to orient our lives with. For me, I've always felt that in a faith community most strongly. So yeah, so I am fully a follower of Jesus, fully United Methodist, you know, Christian, Catholic, universally. I just, for all the terrible things that all those things mean, for me, there's really only one path forward. So I'm going to do my best to hopefully redeem what those things, those labels can mean, and, redeem myself in the process. Yeah.
Amen. I usually end every podcast with a prayer, but I think you just did it. And so I'll just repeat amen. And
Amen.
I'm going to sit with that beautiful sentiment for quite a while. I'm just so grateful for you, Mark. I really am. I'm grateful to learn from you and just to chat with you and just consider you a friend. Thank you for being a part of this work, and I'm looking forward to what comes next. Make sure people know about your collection, Revolution of the Heart. There's a hymnary, and there's also a CD or an album you can download. You even let Julian sing on it. I'm really happy about that too. But yeah, thanks for your time today. You've got a wedding to prepare for, so we're not going to keep you too much longer today. Thank you, Mark. This is Interchange, an exchange of ideas and experiences and hope-filled embrace of all that has been and all that might be as we continue singing our lives back to God. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you all next time.